Greetings again. Glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace to people of goodwill. I just wanted to make one more quick video which takes a look at a portion of this volume of Mikrot Gedolot, to specifically Bereshit or Genesis. In my most recent video before this one, which I put out yesterday, took a look at a medieval Targum on Genesis 21:21, which seemed to have the name Fatima in it, and perhaps so too the name Aisha or maybe Khadija. That was a bit more open to interpretation. But whatever the case, we're going to look at yet another text in this volume, which also has some relevance to Islamic history. And this time we'll be looking at a commentary on Genesis 16:14. So if I can turn to that now. And first, to give the context of Genesis 16, this is the text where Hagar she's like the servant of Sarah or Sarai, Abraham's wife, and she's able to give Abraham a son who's Ishmael. And then there's a conflict between Sarai and Hagar, and Hagar flees, and the angel of the Lord finds her or encounters her by a well somewhere, presumably in the wilderness, presumably in something like the desert, and then sends her back. And the spring that she was at, she gives it a name, or it's a well, something like that. And so it's in verse 14. So just to be clear, as I said, we're in Genesis, and specifically chapter 16. And in verse 14 of chapter 16, which is here, it says that the well that she departed from, that Hagar and Ishmael departed from, is called Be'er Lachai Roi, the well of the living one who sees, right? Something to that effect. And we're going to look at the commentary of Ibn Ezra, which is right here. He has a comment on this particular well, and so here's his comment on verse 14, and he says something that I think is quite interesting. He says, Kal shana hayu hogim hayishmaelim. I guess Hogim literally means like celebrants, people who are celebrating or observing a holiday. But here I want to translate it pilgrims. So in every year there are Ishmaelite pilgrims, or people celebrating a holiday, who go El Habe'er Hazot, who go to that particular well, the one that's mentioned in Genesis 16. And he says, Gam Hayom, also today, Yikra Be'er Zamzam. The well, they call that well, or he calls that well, Zamzam, or the well is called Zamzam. Now, I think that's an incredible claim, because it seems that Ibn Ezra clearly had in mind the well of Zamzam that's in Arabia, that's a central part of the experience of pilgrims to Mecca. So that's pretty interesting. And interestingly enough, Ibn Ezra's contemporary, who's known as Rבינו Bahya, he says basically the same thing. Here's his commentary on verse 14, and let's see if I can find it. He says basically the same thing, right? Bekal Shana, and every year, Hayu HaIshmaelim, there are these Ishmaelites, Chogim, who are pilgrims, or celebrants or observers, whatever the case, El Haber Hazeh, to this well. They go to this well, and then like the exact same thing. Gam Hayom Yikra Be'er Zamzam. And that's quite interesting. So I just wanted to show that. That's really all I wanted to show, that in two rabbinic commentaries from roughly the 12th century, the early 12th century, both of them were Sephardic Jews living in Spain, Ibn Ezra and Rבינו Bahya, if I understand it correctly. They both lived in 12th century Spain. They both claim that the well that's mentioned in Genesis 16, specifically 16:14, was the same well as the well Zamzam, which is so central to the Muslim pilgrimage experience, to the Hajj experience. And I thought that was quite interesting. Now, of course, as a disclaimer, I'm not claiming that you have to agree with either Ibn Ezra or the other commentator that we looked at, but I think it's at least interesting for the historical note, that's all. And so it's interesting what you find in rabbinic literature. But with that, as always, I welcome any comments, questions, or criticisms. So feel free to share your thoughts, whether positive or negative. And God bless.